Hello and welcome to part 3. In this part we are going to look at the marksmanship principles and how to apply them. I am going to do this indoors because I don't have the help of someone else filming me. It is quite difficult to do on your own as you do need to cover a lot of camera angles, and I don't have the ability to do that on my Jack Jones. So please bear with me. I will change this or move outside should I feel the need to, or if I can't feel I can get the point across. But let's look at our first marksmanship principle, and that was the position and hold must be firm enough to support the weapon. What does that mean? Well, have you ever watched those videos on YouTube when people fire off an action and they haven't quite got the grip of the rifle, pistol, shotgun, etc, etc, and it's hilarious to watch somebody get struck in the face with their own sight, be popped on the nose by their pistol butt, and various other accidents that usually form or are caused by the first or failure of the first marksmanship principle, which is the position and hold must be firm enough to support the weapon. In layman's terms, the better position you have, prone position, the more stable the rifle. If you're standing, you're going to be all over the place like a wild man's shite. However, let's look at that and let's have a look. Let's break that down to what I mean. Okay, I'm sat at a table, and you know when you go on some ranges, there are benches for you to shoot on and you can sit down, and this is no different from those. And the principle remains the same whether you're sat at a bench, in the prone position, standing, kneeling, sitting. If you get the position and hold correct, you're achieving the first marksmanship principle. Because this is a rimfire, there is no recoil whatsoever. So the consequences of not having your position and hold isn't going to be painful. However, it will mean that you will miss the target or possibly miss the target. So even though there is no recoil on this rifle, you should still apply those principles to ensure that you give yourself the best chance of hitting your target. So the position and hold must be firm enough to support the weapon. So we place the weapon into our shoulder, hold on to the weapon in the manner that you see fit. There is no one way to do it. You will see people perhaps hold their slings. I do it myself sometimes. That's a perfectly comfortable position for me. Or you will see people do it the traditional way, bring their hand forward onto the rifle here, and again that is a perfectly acceptable position. How you hold the rifle is down to you. There's so many different ways of doing it. So if it's comfortable and it's right, that's fine, absolutely fine, as long as when you squeeze the trigger it doesn't kick back all over the place and take your teeth out. That's the important bit. Right, so the position and hold must be firm enough to support the weapon, and that position I have here is absolutely rock solid. Now let me show you the opposite of that and why this is such a good position. I have in front of me a bipod. I also have this elbow on the desk and this elbow on the desk. This is 4 points of contact to the ground or the desk, and that gives a very, very stable position. It isn't moving one iota. The more you take away, the more. Now we're on a tripod, and although that's still steady, it's not as steady. Let's take my other arm away. Again, steady, but I'm now relying on my body to stay as still as possible because I've lost my 2 rear supports. Now I've lost all my supports. And although at short ranges this is an effective way to shoot and perfectly acceptable, it is, however, very unstable, and the slightest movement from my body is shown on the end of the barrel. So this rifle at this moment in time is not supported, and the position and hold is not really firm enough to support the weapon. However, because I've got a good grip of it, if I do squeeze the trigger, and it was a rifle that had a good recoil, and because I've firmly got a good grip of it, I've got good hold of it, when I do squeeze the trigger, I'm not going to get hit in the face. That sight is not coming back anymore. It cannot come back anymore because I've got the correct sight alignment. So there we go. Let's build our position up again. Bipod, unsupported. Tripod, one elbow. And quad, totally stable. The position and hold must be firm enough to support the weapon. Let's look at marksmanship principle number 2. The weapon must point naturally at the target without any undue physical effort. What does that mean? Well, there are many occasions when you get down on the ground in prone position, standing position, or whatever, and you will place your body in a position that you sometimes are putting your muscles under strain. And if you relax, what happens is your body will go to its natural position. And if you open your eyes again, you'll probably be pointing on another range. Let me explain that in a different way. I naturally put this rifle facing that way, because that is my natural place for that to fit into my shoulder and gives me minimum of stress on my body for the firing position. But typically battery change. But let me move this rifle now to the other side of the camera and try and adopt a position. So I'm going to fire the rifle straight out in front of me. That now, for me, is not natural. And I'm having to twist my body unnaturally to go in line with the rifle. What I want to do, I want to shift my ass around. But I'm not going to, because I'm making a point. So I'm now going to adopt a position now to fire, and I'm putting my body under unnecessary strain. And it's not comfortable at all, and I can't really get my head far enough forward to get the right sight alignment or the right picture aperture from the eye relief. And I'm struggling, and I'm straining, and it's not comfortable. And if this was a 4-bore rifle and I fired that trigger, the minute the round leaves the rifle, my body's going to naturally relax, and it's going to move to an unnatural position, or back to a natural position, should I say. So every time I squeeze the trigger, it's going to want to go back to where it naturally wants to be instead of straining. So I'm not naturally pointing at the target. Now I can adjust my position, my body, to enable this to be a much better position. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to twist myself around a bit, and instantly that is a million times better. I've got the correct eye relief, I've got a much happier picture, I'm a much better position, and I could squeeze the trigger and be pretty confident that I will stay on target once the shot has been released. So that now is an example of the rifle pointing naturally at the target without any undue physical effort. How can we check? There was a man called Nerney, because what he used to make us do was build our position up, get it so we're quite happy, and that we've moved our body all the way around until we're naturally pointing at it the best we could do. And what he would tell us to do then is to close your eyes, place the rifle butt on the floor or back on the ground. Give it a couple of seconds, pick the rifle back up, put it in your shoulder and look at where you're pointing. That's when you realised you weren't actually naturally pointing at the target at all, and subconsciously you were pulling to the left or pulling to the right, or maybe up or maybe down. So you'd either need to shuffle forward, shuffle back, yada yada yada. You would do this for a good 10-15 minutes, just making sure that, you know, where you thought you was right, put it down, pick it up, and eventually you would be something like, now don't get me wrong, you're not going to go smack on the ball. Very rarely would that happen, but you would be in the same ballpark, and that is the key. Because if you have a recoil rifle, something that gives you a bit of a kick too, when your body is finished moving with the rifle, it will return to its natural state, as I previously said. And if it's already pointing at the target already, that means there's less movement of the barrel and less chance of you actually missing. So it is a very good point. So remember, the position and hold must be firm enough to support the weapon, and the weapon must point naturally at the target without any undue physical effort. Let's look at then the third marksmanship principle, which is the sight alignment, i.e. aiming, must be correct. Whether you're using a telescopic sight, a SUSAT sight, a red dot sight, or the traditional iron sights with a foresight and rear sight, each of those different things have to be set up, and you have to know how to look through them, where to look through them, and make sure that everything is lined up. Now, we've already gone over the telescopic sight. I am not going to cover any other sight because I don't have it in front of me, and it's pointless me trying to explain that to you. You might as well use what I've got, and I've got a telescopic sight, and that is what we've done previously. We aligned this sight so we know it now points in the right direction. Before we start zeroing, we know that we're going to be in the same ballpark, and that our sight alignment and our aiming is relatively correct for this rifle before we start to zero. The sight alignment, i.e. aiming, is correct. Now, we've seen many times now, we looked at our eye relief, the distance from here to there. We made sure the rifle is in the correct position and that I can see a full target picture through the sight and not the shadowy bit. If you're not quite sure what I mean by the shadow, let's go back to our drawing that I did earlier. This was our sight picture, and that's what I can see through the sight. But if it's too close, or you're too close, you will see a dark shadow in your aperture. When you look through there, it will be surrounded by a dark shadow, and the closer, or the closer, yeah, the closer you get to it, everything starts to blur, and this brown or black circle moves in and around the picture itself, so you don't actually get to see the full sight. So instead of the full sight, you see this, and it's moving around like that too. And if you're looking at that picture through your telescopic sight, your sight alignment, i.e. aiming, is definitely not correct. Can't really talk much more about that because we've already done it. Let's move on to the final marksmanship principle, which is the shot must be released and followed through without disturbing the position. After you've carried out the first three marksmanship principles, the last thing you really want to do is destroy your shot by wriggling all over the place, not controlling your breathing, not controlling your trigger action, and basically fidgeting. You could even squint. Now, a lot of people actually do squint when they squeeze the trigger because they anticipate the recoil, and they then do that when they squeeze the trigger, which defeats the entire process of what you've just done. So you have to ensure that you continue to look through your sight whilst taking the shot, whilst squeezing the trigger, and let that round leave the barrel, continue onto its journey, and you must still maintain a sight through your sight. You must keep your eye on the target. That is the whole point of this final marksmanship principle. So then, what can go wrong? Well, first of all, you get the trigger snatcher. He's the guy that does that every time he squeezes the trigger. What you should do is, with your tip of your finger, doesn't always have to be the tip, sometimes I just go to the first crease, your finger, and squeeze the trigger, click. Now notice I'm still holding the trigger and I've not let go. And release. Squeeze, click, and release. Nice and slow. Not. That's what we don't do. Squinting, we don't do. Trigger, snatching, we don't do. Uncontrollable breathing, we don't do. You must ensure that you control your breathing. Some say full in, some say full out. I say half in, half out. Gives you around about 4 to 6 seconds before you need to take a breath to take your shot. Which is probably why you've usually got around about 4 seconds to take your shot, because that's all you really need to take if you got the position right. If you do not control your breathing, your rifle will jump up and down like a lunatic. Let me give you an example of that. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. That's what happens to the tip of your rifle every time you breathe. Now, yes, that is exaggerated, I admit that, but it's proving a point. What we need to do is hold it steady. And how I do that is by taking a good couple of breaths, releasing the breath. When I get about halfway, concentrate on my sight alignment, my picture, squeeze the trigger, take the shot, hold the trigger, let the shot round leave the rifle, continue looking onto the target area. Then I'm ready to reload or recock the weapon or continue on to a next round, depending on whether I'm automatic or bolt action. Let's put that into action. And there we go. Very easy for me to sit here in the comfort of my kitchen that isn't my curtains to explain those things to you. It's much more difficult to put those into practice out there on the ranges. That then concludes part 3 of this series. We are going to move on to part 4, which will be grouping and zeroing, the theory of a group, the mean point of impact, and final zero. Check zero. So let's look forward to that then. See you next time. Bye bye.